And we are blessed to have in the studio with us once again the two candidates for the 62nd State House seat, currently occupied by State Representative Dr. John Bison, who is running instead for State Senate. So we have Republican Dave Morgan and we have Democrat Jim Haadsma in the studio. Good morning to you, gentlemen.
Good morning. My pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, Tim.
It was great to see both of you guys, too, on Saturday night over at the Post Foundation event. They do a lot for education and schools. They raise money for it with a silent auction and a live auction. And I know you guys were campaigning all day and working all day on Saturday. And the conditions outside weren't all that great either. But you showed up all shined up and talked to people at theirs. I thought that was very impressive that both of you were there.
Well, I think both of us enjoyed it. We had an opportunity to bid on items, and you did a great job as auctioneer.
Well, thank you. I had fun doing that. A lot of nice people there. Well, last time that we talked, it was a couple of weeks ago or so. I know Jim went first and last, and so I promised that we'd even it up today and let Dave go first. Dave, I guess we'll let you have a couple of minutes here, each of you guys, and tell us why you're the man for the job in the 62nd State House seat.
Well, good morning, Tim, and thanks for having us on once again. A little bit about myself. I have a daughter, Jaden, who's 12 years old. She's a 7th grader at Lakeview Middle School, a very good player on the volleyball team. I love to go watch her there. Our family history goes back into the 1800s in the district. Out in Penfield, Morgan Road's named after my great-grandfather. Cambly School's where he lived. He was a farmer. He had a horse farm on one side, what now is Morgan Road. Dairy farm on the other side of Morgan Road. So our roots go way back. So we have a real vested interest into the district. Of course, I'm the Penfield Township, Charter Township Supervisor now. My great-grandfather was the Charter Township Supervisor of Bedford way back. So that was kind of interesting. Really had a lifetime of service in the community, whether it's been serving in government or serving as a baseball coach or instructor. In one of our community organizations. I'm a small business owner. I own properties in Michigan and Arizona, so I invest in both places. Amtrak engineer is one of the careers I've been in. Still have my license. I was a manager for Amtrak for 13 years. I've had my Amtrak locomotive engineer's license for approximately 25 years. Coached at Harper Creek, Bellevue, St. Phil, Penfield. Many kids in the Battle Creek school system in the summer programs. Worked with Chuck Turner and coached a lot of the kids in youth programs. Member of the Hall of Fame for amateur sports here in Battle Creek. Member of the Penfield Lions Club, Lakeview Urbandale Kiwanis, the American Legion Post 298. And most importantly, other than my daughter, served in the military. 11 years there. Was honored to be assigned to President Bush's security team for 2 years, 1991-92. From there, I moved on to Nellis Air Force Base, was assigned with the U.S. Thunderbirds. So that's pretty much my history.
Certainly got a history here in our community, and why should we vote for you?
Well, I think I have the ability to bring people together. I was a Democrat, I'm Republican now. I think there's great people on both sides. I think it takes a unique person to be able to bring people together and work what's best for our community.
Okay. Jim Haadsma, tell us why we should vote for you and maybe a little bit about your service to our community.
Sure. Thank you, Tim. Betsy and I have 4 kids, 26-year-old who works at the State Supreme Court, 24-year-old who works for General Motors in Warren designing products, 22-year-old who's at Albion College, and like Dave's daughter, I have some excellent athletes in my family, and we watched my 22-year-old in his final cross-country meet for Albion College on Saturday, so found time to get over and do that, and have a 19-year-old who is a freshman at Albion College. I've been a lawyer with McCroskey Law, a regional law firm, for 31 plus years. I'm a partner in that firm since 1992. Before I started with McCroskey, I worked with Legal Aid of Western Michigan in Muskegon for 3 years. In addition to my professional background, served on the Calhoun County Board of Commissioners for 8 years and had great opportunity to learn much about local government in context of doing that. Serve on many boards and authorities around the Battle Creek, Calhoun County area, such as the Art Center of Battle Creek, Salvation Army Advisory Board, and the Havens Board. I want to make sure we bring good jobs with advanced manufacturing and renewable energy components back to Battle Creek. I want to focus on bringing back our infrastructure, making certain that we have the world-class roads we used to have. I want to make sure that we shore up our water infrastructure so we don't have manganese in the water, and so we can combat PFAS in the water. I want to make sure that K-12 public education is fortified, and I want to make sure that higher education is more affordable at the public university level for all Michigan citizens.
Last time we talked, we didn't have time to get to a question that came up, and that was Dave Morgan. Why did you switch from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party? You ran as a Democrat a couple of times, unsuccessfully, and then switched to the Republican Party.
Well, for me, Tim, it was not really about me leaving the Democratic Party, but the Democratic Party leaving me, and we see that on both sides now. I don't believe you should be lockstep with any party. I think you got to go with what you believe is, well, go with integrity first. For me, I know and I think it's an asset as well, because I know the issues on both sides. I know what's important to the families. I've met families on both sides, walked houses on both sides. And to be honest, 90% of the people are fantastic. And we all agree, well, 100% of the people are fantastic. But on the issues, 90% of the issues we all agree on. It's that 10% that really we need to come together and work on. And I think it's a real positive that, well, I've shown I'm not going to be lockstep with a party. I'm not going to bow down to any party. I'm going to do what's right for what I think is what's best for the community. Right now, what I see happening in the Democratic Party, when you have elected officials going out, promoting resistance, obstruction, chasing Republicans down in restaurants, I don't agree with that. And I'm not going to go lockstep with them just to keep a D in front of my name. As far as the Republicans go, I've been nothing but impressed. I've been in meetings. They're very caring people, much like many of the Democrats. So I think it's a positive when you have somebody that can relate to both sides, bring people together, and work what's best for the community.
Mm-hmm. Jim, you've been a lifelong Democrat? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
My parents were Republican by vintage, but they evolved over time as they became older.
Interesting way to put it. I see that with my folks also. I think that and it's kind of funny, when people are very young, they tend to belong perhaps to the Democratic Party. In middle age, many gravitate to the Republican Party, and then, as you just kind of alluded to, as people get older, sometimes they gravitate back toward the Democrat Party. Would you guys agree with that statement, and why do you think that is?
Well, I would say some of our greatest leaders have switched parties. They've realized that people come before politics, no matter what you do. We look at Ronald Reagan. In a lot of ways, my resume is like him. He was a union leader. I'm a union leader. He was president of a union. I was president of, I was elected to the leadership in a union. He switched from Democrat to Republican. We look at Joe Schwartz here in Battle Creek. He left the Republican Party. Now he's an independent. I would say those are both great leaders and with a lot of integrity. And I think it takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. We see people who have left the Democratic Party, especially African Americans, the minute they do it, all of a sudden they're attacked unmercifully. And I denounce all of that, the name calling, the attacks, the going into restaurants, attacking people, chasing them down. It's just a terrible thing. And our kids look and they listen to everything we say. They're watching what we do. We need to tone it down and do what's best for the community, not what's best for the Democrats or Republicans.
Tim, I don't denounce anyone for a party affiliation. I don't follow people into restaurants, and I don't know people around here who follow people into restaurants and denounce them because they're a Republican or some other party. In response to your question, think that there are some people who evolve for one reason or another, but I think in the main, most people embrace a party early on, and then sometimes they become more independent over time. And I think more and more, as I go door to door throughout the community for a couple of seasons now, and before that many seasons running for county board, many people are voting as independents. They're voting as independents because they want the best person for the job, regardless of party affiliation. And they want someone who's going to fight for our community without any kind of bowing down to party leaders or lobbyists in Lansing or Washington.
Jim Haadsma, Dave Morgan, they squaring off for the 62nd House seat. They are in our studio this morning. I want to talk about the ballot proposals just a little bit and get your take on it. Let's start with the marijuana legalization proposal 1. What do you guys think? Dave Morgan, pro or con?
Well, I'm against it, but I'm against the way we do proposals in the first place. We go out and get the signatures, then we come back, we put them on the ballot pretty quick, even to the point where the language was being changed just months ago. It doesn't give the voters a lot of time to see the real effects that they're going to cause on our community or to do research. So I would like to look at a way to back those up, to give them time, so give the voters time to be educated on their vote. As far as the marijuana issue, I would vote no, just because there's way too many unknowns. There are a lot of problems in Colorado. Violent crime, I believe they're one of the only states, if not the only state, that actually went up this year instead of coming down. Same with misdemeanors, traffic violations, auto insurance rates have went up there. It's hard to believe they can't go up much more here. They're as high as in the country. So there are a lot of negative effects. The main thing is, when I hear the Democrats talk, they talk about the revenues that are going to be generated by this ballot proposal. And I don't agree that we should sell our kids out for a revenue increase. We don't have a revenue problem in Lansing. We have a spending problem in Lansing. And I think we really need to look at how this is going to affect our community. I cannot honestly think of one thing, and maybe Jim can, that's positive, that we can say, oh, this is great, it's going to help education. Oh, this is great, it's going to help our infrastructure. Oh, this is great, it's going to do something. I can't find it. I see no positives. I see a lot of possible negatives. It could be catastrophic for our state. And if it's passed by ballot proposal, it's going to take 75% of the House, Senate, and signed by the governor to make any changes. And so we need to be sure that this is the right proposal, what we really want to do.
Yep. Jim, proposal A?
I'm supportive of proposal 1. In different years called A, but
Oh, yeah,
this year 1.
Yeah, it should be my mistake. Yep.
Not a problem. It's always mystifying to me how one year they're A and another year they're 1. But this year 1, we have, from a perspective of law enforcement, I think other priorities we need to focus on other than marijuana possession. I've been endorsed by organizations like the Police Officers Association of Michigan and the Deputy Sheriff's Association of Michigan. And I think that the members of those organizations should be focused on more significant potential crimes in our communities than possession of marijuana. I want to make sure that marijuana is out of the black market. I think with a reasonable regulatory apparatus, we can make sure that marijuana is better controlled in our community. Other states have undertaken this change to recreational marijuana, and I think have done it quite well. We have some examples from, say, the state of Washington, which we can follow as a prototype and learn from things they didn't do well and learn from things they did really well. As Dave mentioned, we also have, because of the regulation of the marijuana, an opportunity to attain some revenue. I think that when we regulate this, instead of spending scarce police resources on controlling possession, we can find other sources of revenue for our educational system and for improvement of our roads.
And proposal 2, 18-2, I think it's actually called, and this would actually change the way that we draw our legislative districts, both at the state and federal level for the state of Michigan.
Right.
Pro or con? Jim, you go first this time.
I'm supportive of proposal 2. I can give 2 examples in Calhoun County of why redistricting reform is important. We haven't had a competitive state Senate race in our community since 2008, and we likely won't have a competitive state Senate race this year. That's because the 19th Senate District in 2011 was redistricted to bind Calhoun County to Ionia counties and Eaton County. Those counties are consistently Republican counties, and consequently the candidate who wins the Republican primary in August, in this case 12, 16, 18, is going to, 10, 14, 18, is going to probably win the state Senate seat.
This is why the two of you are actually running right now, because the state representative, Dr. John Bison, chose to run for this seat that you're talking about, and that, even though he didn't have to, because he had one more term he could have.
I think that's an important issue too, because of gerrymandering and combining that with term limits. We often have state house representatives who are just getting feet underneath him or her, and he or she right away running for a Senate district. In this case, it's not unreasonable to trade in 2 years of state house service for potentially 8 years of state Senate service, and I think that's what Dr. Bison did in this case. The other issue I point to is we used to have a competitive congressional seat in which Battle Creek and Albion sat. We were in the 7th, and we were connected to communities like in Jackson and Adrian, to which we're better connected. And then 20 years before that, we were connected to Kalamazoo, to the west. I think we're a community that's well connected with 94 corridor cities. And after the 2011 redistricting, we got connected to Berry County and places in Kent County like Rockford, and places in Ionia County like Belding. And we just don't have a good connection with that. We become a lesser light. I think we are a lesser important port of call for Justin Amash, the congressional member for the 3rd District, and consequently we just don't get visits in Calhoun County with regularity from our congressional member. So I definitely think that Proposal 2 is going to work well for Calhoun County. I think it's a good alternative than the alternative that's in existence now, which is the party in power draws the district boundaries.
Okay, Dave Morgan, Proposal 2.
Right. Well, real quick, I wanted to say something going back to Proposal 1. Jim mentioned his endorsements. I'm endorsed by the FOP and Sheriff Saxton. Sheriff Saxton's been very outspoken about the negative effects of what Proposition 1 will do in our community. So I think really we need to look at that close before we push into that. But Proposal 2, I think, is absolutely the worst proposal I've ever seen in my lifetime, and I'll tell you why. Sure, there's a problem with gerrymandering. As you know, I was Democrat, Republican. Both sides do exactly the same thing. The problem with Proposal 2, so there does need to be some adjustments made. Problem with Proposal 2 is we're going to create a commission where the people on the commission self-identify with whatever party they're going to be in. Okay, I can see that as being a disaster. These are highly paid positions which aren't advertised. The voters get to see a little paragraph. Actually, there's 9 pages to Proposal 2. And this is when I talk about backing things up to give voters the time to be educated on what they're going to do. A commissioner is going to make $40,000 to $50,000 a year to sit on this commission. To me, that's absurd. We're going to take $5.5 million from something that right now costs the taxpayers nothing. We're going to shift that to this so-called commission that's going to step in and solve all of our problems. That's ludicrous to start. That's why we have a problem funding education sometimes, our roads sometimes, because we spend money like this in ways that really doesn't need to be spent. The other thing is, right now, the Libertarian Party, you'll see on the ballot this year because they qualified, they've been excluded out of this process, as will any party going into the future. It pretty much locks in just the Republicans and Democrats from having a say about this commission going forward. I think the Libertarians should have a voice. I think going forward, any party that comes into power should have a voice. So this proposal is really bad in many ways. Sure, we need to do it. I mean, we need to come together and figure out what we can do for so-called gerrymandering. But we don't need to do it at such a high cost to the taxpayers. Certainly we can come, and this is another situation. All we need to do is come together in Lansing. It's Democrats, Republicans, elected officials. You're elected to represent the people, not the parties. We should be able to come together, solve the problem without bankrupting our taxpayers.
Talking with Dave Morgan and Jim Haadsma. They are candidates for the 62nd State House seat. We left off at Proposal 3. And no, you don't have to state a reason for absentee and a few other things. Change to how we can cast a vote.
Kind of interesting with absentee voting right now becoming more and more popular. A lot of people tuned out our interview with you guys this morning because they already voted. A lot of people have already cast their votes. My folks cast their vote a long time ago. So I, didn't have a chance to talk them out of any of it. So not that I could. But Dave, what do you think about Proposal 3?
Well, Proposal 3, I'll be a no again, only because I haven't even had enough time to look at all the ramifications. But one thing that seriously I want to look at is it requires residency, not citizenship, in order to register to vote. I think that's a problem. I think you really need to be a citizen of the United States before you have voting rights, not just come here and register and vote. So I think that's a huge problem here in Michigan, or will be in Michigan. Also, once again, they're pushing this through very quickly. So I think if we take time, look at it, sure, we want to say, I like the idea of absentee voting. I like the idea of giving everybody the best option they can to vote, especially our military. While we're sitting here today, we have people serving overseas risking their life so we can do what we're doing right now. And we need to make sure they have ample time to vote and get the ballots out to them, because they're the ones fighting for our rights. And so I'll vote no on this, but I would like to look at a lot of different alternatives as the state representative. And sure, I'd look forward in the future to find as many ways as we can to make voting as accessible as possible to everybody.
So you're no on all three. Jim Haadsma, what do you think about Proposal 3?
I'm yes on Proposal 3. And taking a page from Dave's book, I'm going to go back and mention the earlier proposal. And in relation to Proposal 2, he talks about payment of these 13 commissioners. The redistricting commission wouldn't sit for 10 years. It would sit for a short duration of time, probably not longer than 1 year. And if you pay nothing, as we do now, you often get a wreck. If I want to pay someone who's not a professional mechanic, I'm probably going to get my car ruined. And I think that's what we have now with the gerrymandered districts we have. In relation to the third proposal, I will say I'm surprised that Dave indicated he's no, because I just heard a recent WMUK interview done within the last 2 weeks in which he said he was yes on that, and it was a no-brainer in his words to be yes on that. So I think still
Go ahead.
I think it's definitely one in which he should go back to what he said just 2 weeks ago and say, yes, we have no reason absentee voter opportunity.
Did you have a different, did you change your opinion on that?
I was there. I said, getting people to the polls to vote, absolutely, it's a no-brainer. That's what we want to do. That's what I still want to do. But as I talked about earlier, these aren't just little paragraphs that voters see on their ballots. These are massive propositions that have multiple pages. Since then, I've read a lot. I've looked at it, and when it said residency instead of citizenship, no, absolutely, I switched to no.
Talk a little bit about endorsements. You both touched on law enforcement endorsements. You both have a fair amount of law enforcement endorsements, and law enforcement is fairly split on Prop 1, although I think most that I've heard are against it. What are some other endorsements that you have currently, Jim Haadsma?
I'm endorsed by the Firefighters Association of Michigan. I'm endorsed by the teachers unions, that is the MEA as well as the Michigan Federation of Teachers. I'm endorsed by the League of Conservation Voters. I'm endorsed by every organized labor unit accepting the Teamsters, which Dave has proclaimed in his flyers and in his earlier interview. We didn't get an opportunity to seek the Teamsters endorsement this time. That is my campaign. So I can say that I'm the candidate who will fight for indexation of unemployment compensation benefits to tie that to inflation, or seek 26 weeks rather than the very limited 20 weeks of unemployment compensation benefits presently given unemployed workers, or seek reforms in right to work. I want to revisit prevailing wage, and I'd like to make some changes to the Workers' Disability Compensation Act, presently very unfavorably tilted in the way of employers vis-a-vis employees. So I'm the candidate who every organized labor unit supports, accepting Teamsters, and they do it for the reason that I will fight for their rights in Lansing. I will fight to help the middle class, the working class in our communities of Battle Creek and Albion.
Will you try to take away our right to work state status and revert back to where we were before?
So far, the change to right to work early part of this decade hasn't demonstrated any increase in jobs attainment in Michigan. I certainly think that unions should have the right, if they're being mandated to represent their members, to seek union dues from those members. And I think that right to work hasn't demonstrated itself as an improvement to the business climate in Michigan. I think that with strong labor unions, we have a better workforce doing better jobs and enhancing Michigan business in that process.
Dave Morgan.
All right.
Endorsements.
Well, some of my endorsements, of course, Senator Mike Noss, who's represented our community very well, been very moderate. Our current state representative, Dr. John Bison, who in fact is a veteran. He's represented our district with class and integrity. He's going to do a great job as our next senator. We also have the endorsement of both the Michigan Chamber of Commerce and the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, as Jim was alluding to. It's one of the rare times they both come together and decided on one candidate, and the only time that anybody knows of that they both put personal statements out about how important this race is, about bringing people together so we can move forward past political agendas. As far as Jim saying he's endorsed by every other union, that's just not true. That shows how unqualified he really is as far as unions go, because he's endorsed by a few unions. He's not even aware of all the other unions that do exist right here in our community. I'm also endorsed by the International Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trademen, the Michigan Realtors, Battle Creek Board of Realtors, Fraternal Order of Police, which is the largest organization for our police officers that serve so well, Michigan Manufacturers and the Small Business Association. Mayor Mark Banke just came out and endorsed us. Former Mayor Deb Owens just came out and endorsed us because we're able to bring people together, which will benefit Battle Creek and every surrounding community. Sheriff Matt Saxton, Calhoun County Prosecutor Dave Gilbert, Calhoun County Board Chairman Derek King and the former Chair Art Kale, and County Commissioners Steve Frisbee, Vic Potter, Kathy Sue Vett, Gary Tompkins, and former Commissioner Terrace Todd. And one of the most important things, the people who know me best, all four of the trustees at Penfield endorsed me as well, including our fire department, their union as well.
Has right to work been a good or a bad thing for Michigan?
Well, that's debatable. And I have 90 years, well, my family has 90 years in labor. My dad was a union member. My mother was a union steward. I'm elected as the state representative for the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers, representing all Amtrak engineers here in Michigan. We need to just bring people together. It doesn't need to be a war between labor and business. Both of them need to be there for the other to succeed. When they both come together, both will thrive. That's why you see the endorsement from labor and business together for us.
Jim Haadsma is with us, Democrat for the State House race, and Dave Morgan, Republican for the State House race. We've been talking about issues, proposals, and the like. I got to bring up the big one again, and that is roads, because everybody talks about the roads, and everybody blames people for the roads. One side will say, well, the Republicans have had plenty of time to fix the roads, haven't done it yet. Another side will say, well, they're making good progress. We just haven't quite seen the results of it yet. But the whole problem started back before they were in power. But I guess the better question is what do we need to do moving forward? I think I've heard both of you guys say in the rural areas that township citizens probably going to have to step up and pay the piper a little bit if they want to get their share of funding. Do you guys agree?
I think we need to do better collaboration in relation to different governments. That is, Calhoun County has collaborated with Jackson County to bring efficiencies to roads in relation to how we improve the roads and how we professionally buy supplies for the roads. I also think that we have to look at revenue sources like the out-of-state online taxation that will be imposed on out-of-state online merchants now, and I think Governor Snyder has made a good argument so far, not taken up by anybody in the Republican caucus, at least successfully in the legislature, to use that money that now will be collected from these out-of-state sellers of goods on the internet and apply that money to roads. We have to, without question, prioritize our roads, bridges, and our water supplies. And that's, I think, the fundamental purpose of government, is to provide essential public services, and we need to do a better job than we've done for the last 8 years in doing that.
Do you think that rural townships should have to pass a millage or a special assessment to get part of the county funding as it is right now in Calhoun County? Some townships have done that, some have not.
Penfield has, Albion Township has. I don't think it should be required, but it's important as a buy-in and to get a county share in relation to that roads improvement program in those individual townships as well. We should have a roads program which doesn't mandate that townships have to do that, but we've kicked the can down the road for so many years that if a township resident wants to live in a township with good roads, unfortunately, what we've allowed to evolve is a situation in which often the township resident must support a township millage, which is what happened in, say, Albion Township. If you look at the roads in Albion Township or Bedford Township, compare those to roads in, say, Burlington Township or Marengo Township, there's a great difference. And we as a state should not have allowed that great difference to have evolved.
Dave Morgan, roads.
Well, I think there's multiple situations that are occurring. One is Act 51, which was actually created in 1951, kind of oversees our road funding. That definitely needs to be looked at. Township should be included in Act 51. Money should come down to the townships. Also, one of the things I think needs to be looked at, being a township supervisor, we see this, and if you look at Emmett Township, they have federal roads, state roads, local roads, and county roads. Those are all different pots of money that are being used to fix those various roads. We have state, county, and local in Penfield. But the problem is when you give a certain amount of money for federal, state, county, and local, they can't cross over. So as a taxpayer, I don't care how you're going to do it. I'm paying the money. You guys figure it out. But it's a shame that if there's a pothole and it happens to be on a local road and the federal road people are right there, they can't fix it. We need to look at bridging these people, bringing the resources together, using them as efficiently as possible. And then things will start working better. Governor Snyder's put us in a much, much better situation for roads moving forward. And I'll tell you how he did that, by making Michigan a business friendly state again and bringing in jobs. We've created 500 jobs in the last 7 years. We went from 41st to 10th in the nation in business climate, 49th to 8th in corporate tax ratings. We're number one in job creation in the Great Lakes states. These are both union jobs and non-union jobs. So by bringing them here and making Michigan a much better business-friendly state, we're going to start seeing more money revenues without going to the taxpayers and asking for more. we'll see more money generated to come in and help fix our infrastructure, which includes water as well.
I hear a common theme there that we've got resources, we just need to find a way to use them more efficiently and with more cooperation. I kind of hear both of you saying that.
Without question, one needs to know how to use the tool of a budget to prioritize what's most essential in state government.
We've got 2 minutes left. Jim Haadsma, tell us why we should give you the job.
I'd like to bring back an economy to the Battle Creek area in which all can participate, in which wages aren't lagging, in which people can save money and help send their kids to higher education, public universities. I want to champion an infrastructure which brings back world-class roads and safe bridges and good drinking water without manganese and PFAS. I want to make sure that our K-12 education program is fortified. I'd be able to do that. Want to make sure that our kids' scores on M-STEP and our standing in relation to other states is prioritized. Please consider me when you go to the polls November 6th.
Dave Morgan, why should we vote for you?
Well, thank you, Tim. I think it's a clear choice as far as whose ability it has to bring labor, business together for the betterment of the community. I think we need to look at everything and bring our tax structure down, put families and businesses in a position to be successful. We've seen a great comeback in Michigan under Republican leadership. We've seen unemployment go from 14.9% all the way down to 4%. The best since 2000. So we need to continue that comeback. I've led my life with integrity. I've served in the military. I'll serve our community with integrity as well.
Gentlemen, thank you for being our guest again. Best of luck. The election is 1 week from tomorrow for those who haven't already voted. And we appreciate you being here.
You're welcome. Thank you,
Thank
Tim.
you, sir.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.